Though there's always the potential for a movie to surprise every single one of us when it comes out, it's far more common for a film that gives an off vibe to match those expectations upon release. Like, it's just there, hanging around at the function, giving off the vague aroma of stale, unwashed jeans. This is not a pleasant thing to be around. Yeah, sometimes the tea leaves just point to a film either being critically or commercially unsuccessful, or maybe even both, such that even those who made the movie probably aren't terribly surprised by its badness, which is definitely the case with these upcoming films, each of which is making us go PU at the start of their posters, trailers, or cringy pre-release press. I'm Ewan, this is Whatculture, and here are just a few upcoming movies that are already doomed. Doomed! First up, The Strangers Chapter 3. It couldn't be much more obvious that the final entry in Renny Harlin's woeful reboot trilogy of The Strangers is being sent out to die by Lionsgate. Though last year's first chapter was a modest box office hit, the law of diminishing returns swiftly kicked in for Chapter 2, which grossed less than half of its predecessor, seeming to suggest that mainstream interest in the franchise had basically evaporated. But as the entire trilogy was shot concurrently in 2022, Chapter 3 was always going to come out regardless. Yet, rather than release it next spooky season, as most surely expected, it's instead being dumped on Super Bowl weekend this coming February, which is like the kiss of death in terms of movie, terminology. It's clear that Lionsgate is just burning this one off as soon as possible so they can collect whatever meager money it makes and then move on. And can you blame them? Chapter 2 so fatally misunderstood the entire appeal of the series, namely that the strangers are meant to be strangers, that, the ship has well and truly sailed on any interest for Part 3. And considering the critical response to the two previous films, predominantly negative reviews are near enough guaranteed. You ever find yourself scrolling through your movie watch list, coming across a classic that you really want to watch, only to find out it's not available in your own country? Wish you could watch it while staying safe online? Well, now you can, and save up to 72% while you do it. You're like one step away from being Matthew Lillard in the movie Hackers, which is like the epitome of being cool. That's right, folks, we have an exclusive offer from NortonVPN right now that'll get you up to 72% off depending on where in the world you're based. We have different links and discount codes for the UK, US, and Canada, and Australia too, so make sure you use the right one and don't confuse your dollars with your dollary dues and pounds and so on and so forth. Get NortonVPN today and unlock your favorite content while you're on the go. Next up, when you make so many movies, you forget about one of them, In the Grey. Guy Ritchie has basically become a one-guy film industry in recent years, pumping out more mid-budget genre films than most could actually keep up with. Sort of like Steven Soderbergh, but only a lot less interesting. The next one on the docket is In the Grey, an action thriller starring Henry Cavill, Jake Gyllenhaal, Isaac Gonzalez, and Rosamund Pike. Here's the rub though. In the Grey actually wrapped shooting in October 2023, since which Ritchie has shot two other movies, Fountain of Youth and Wife and Dog. Though originally set to release in January 2025, the film was abruptly pulled by Lionsgate last year due to post-production not being complete, and in November they gave up the American distribution rights altogether. Yeah. Reports subsequently emerged that the movie still needs to carry out reshoots, but the schedules of the principal players are so incredibly stacked at the moment that getting everyone together is proving pretty troublesome. Given that Cavill will soon star in the Highlander reboot, Gyllenhaal is currently shooting Roadhouse 2, God help us, and Ritchie starts shooting his next movie in January, it may still be a while yet before all are available, in turn ensuring that In the Grey could easily slip to late 2026 or maybe even 2027. Long-shelved movies very rarely translate to critical or commercial success, so it's far more likely that In the Grey gets quietly dumped on streaming at some point or another. Next up, A Recipe for Disaster. It's Rush Hour 4. Considering that Rush Hour 3 was savaged by critics and grossed considerably less than the second film, it seemed like a pretty natural stopping point for the series. And while Jackie Chan and Chris Tucker have both periodically talked up the prospect of a fourth film over the last 20 years, it seemed like one of those vaporware sequels that would never actually get made, especially with the duo being so much older now. Yet Rush Hour 4 was confirmed just recently, with Brett Ratner, who helmed all three previous films, returning to direct. Now, this alone is enough to turn off many, given that not only is Ratner a hack director who was fortunate enough to have Jackie goddamn Chan on set to make those Rush Hour movies at least a little bit memorable, but he's also been accused of sexual misconduct and harassment by numerous actors, including Olivia Munn, Natasha Henstridge, and Elliot Page. There is simply no reason for this guy to continue having a movie career. Then there's also the fact that Rush Hour 4 was apparently given the green light after intense lobbying by President Donald Trump, and considering that Ratner has directed an upcoming documentary about Melania Trump, it's easy to see how all those pieces have come together. Yeah, what a timeline, eh? What a timeline. Why couldn't we have gotten like a Shanghai Nights sequel instead? Those movies were actually good. Next up, Kevin Costner goes rogue. It's Horizon and American Saga, Chapters 2 to Chapter 4. In 2022, Kevin Costner began shooting his four-film Western epic Horizon, with Chapter 1 releasing in 2024, to mixed reviews while also notoriously flopping at the box office. This left the rest of Costner's ambitious project in a majorly awkward spot, suggesting that the audience interest just wasn't there to see it through to the end. Chapter 2 had already been shot though, and despite premiering at the Venice Film Festival in September 2024, its release date was subsequently pulled. And yeah, well over a year later from that premiere, and we still don't know when that sequel will actually be hitting cinemas, which has likely been unaided by the fact that that premiere also got some seriously mixed reviews. As for Chapter 3, only small slivers of it have actually been filmed, with Costner struggling to secure funding to complete the third and fourth entries. Investing seems like an even dicier prospect, given that the franchise is currently embroiled in 3 separate lawsuits pertaining to an allegedly mistreated stunt double, financial issues, and breach of contract. Costner is desperate enough that he's since tried to shore up money from Saudi investors, even though they apparently won't give Costner the large budget he needs to realize his vision. And yet, laudable though Costner's commitment is to the bit, i.e. the Western genre, with limited commercial appeal in 2025, it does feel like the market, or even the universe and cosmos, has spoken, which is a big shame for me, as I really liked that first movie. Yeah. C'est la vie, I guess, you know. No more cowboys for you, and gonna hit you all with a sad yeehaw now. Yeehaw. A sequel to a 2010s classic, it's The Social Reckoning. The Social Network remains one of the most unexpectedly brilliant and most iconic films of the last 25 years. And though a sequel has been talked up numerous times, it was assumed it would only happen if David Fincher returned to direct. Well, that's no longer the case. In June 2025, it was announced that Aaron Sorkin would both write and direct a follow-up, later titled The Social Reckoning, centered around Facebook's impact on society since the first film, with a particular focus on whistleblower Frances Haugen and the January 6 United States Capitol attack. For starters, while Sorkin is a brilliant writer, he's less assured as a director, and certainly not up to the caliber of a talent like Fincher. I mean, I loved Molly's Game, but the rest of his repertoire is very hit or miss. Then there's also the fact that Jesse Eisenberg opted not to reprise the role of Facebook co-founder Mark Zuckerberg, who is now being played by Jeremy Strong. Strong's a great actor, obviously, no question, but the lack of consistency across films is bound to be a frustration for, at least a good portion of the audience out there. The title has also come in for criticism, and for many, revisiting the events of January 6 in fictionalized form doesn't sound like it's gonna have that much appeal. All of that's to say that The Social Reckoning faces a huge uphill struggle to justify its existence and capture a fraction of the zeitgeist appeal that its predecessor did. It might be a completely decent, even good film, and it's one that I'm genuinely rooting for, but it has the near insurmountable task living up to one of the best movies of the century so far, so yeah, no pressure there. On the way, Mother Mary. Mother Mary is the latest film from the great David Lowery, who directed A Ghost Story and The Green Knight, and will follow the relationship between the titular singer, played by Anne Hathaway, and a fashion designer played by Michaela Cole. Lowery's film has been shrouded in secrecy ever since it started shooting in May 2023, and more than 2.5 years later, it's still without a release date, which, yeah, isn't a great sign. Shooting ultimately didn't wrap until July 2024, and though Mother Mary was widely expected to premiere at festivals in either late 2024 or 2025, we've not heard a peep from it since. Test screening reports paint a picture of a challenging, uncommercial film, largely centered around two characters talking, and Lowery himself inferred in interviews that he didn't really know what the film was, even while editing it, ultimately calling it the hardest thing he's ever done, and a quote-unquote, weird film. Sounds exactly up my kind of street, but yeah, this could struggle with general audiences. Now, it is of course entirely possible that Lowery delivers a cult classic which hits with the cinephile crowd, but the absurdly prolonged production and near total radio silence from A24 about the project don't exactly paint the most encouraging picture. Lowery is certainly a director to root for, but looking at the facts we have so far, it's a fair prediction that this one will flop at the box office and maybe garner a divisive response from critics and audiences. Next up, they're making another of these? Ice Age Boiling Point. Because Hollywood just can't let a played-out idea go, of course there's a new Ice Age movie on the way. Like, it's mad to think that this franchise is like 20 years old now. 20 years old, that's goddamn. The hit animated franchise has put out 5 theatrically released movies to date, which have collectively grossed an astonishing $3.2 billion worldwide, so yeah, it's easy to see why Disney would be interested in making another. The series' box office peaked with 2009's Ice Age Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and the most recent theatrical offering, 2016's Ice Age Collision Course, grossed just $408 million, only a hair more than the original film made in 2002. Between this and the fact that each sequel has been worse reviewed than the one before it, it's easy to suggest that Ice Age has run out of creative and commercial juice as an IP and should maybe just be left to, cool off elsewhere. This was bolstered by Disney shutting down the series' animation outfit, Blue Sky Studios, in 2021, after which they produced a widely panned direct-to-Disney Plus film, The Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, by outsourcing the animation work to another studio. That felt like the natural end of Ice Age, but of course Disney is pressing on with a 6th movie, Ice Age Boiling Point, which feels like one of Hollywood's most egregious recent examples of flogging a dead horse, or in this case, dead woolly mammoths. Between all of this and how families have been trained to wait for streaming since the pandemic, it seems highly likely that this new Ice Age will be yet another nail hammered in the series' musty, dusty, and crusty coffin. On the way, The Mummy, but not the one you're thinking of. When it was first announced that Evil Dead Rise director Lee Cronin would be tackling a lower budget take on The Mummy, there was considerable excitement that he might give it a treatment similar to Lee Whannell's acclaimed 2020 take on The Invisible Man. But it's no understatement to say that enthusiasm has cooled on the film in recent months, even as the story particulars remain firmly under wraps, and I'm personally still very buzzed about it. Some unsubstantiated reports started doing the rounds online that Cronin's film wasn't testing well, and that the production received pressure from Universal to change the title to the Resurrected to create a distinction from the Universal Monsters iteration of the character. Not exactly a great vote of confidence. Now, it remains to be seen if this actually pans out, but another issue we do know is true. Universal is working on a fourth entry into their mega-popular Brendan Fraser starring Mummy franchise and is bringing Fraser and Rachel Weisz back, which is just a big old hell yeah moment for the movies, I think we can all agree. Said reunion is being directed by Ready or Not and Scream filmmakers Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillette, and given the enduring popularity of the original Mummy trilogy, Universal will likely be fast-tracking its production. That is to say that Cronin's The Mummy is likely to have its lunch eaten by the new Fraser-starring sequel, and even though Cronin's film will release first, many fans may probably just decide to wait for The Mummy 4 instead, which is a big shame because Evil Dead Rise was so cool, and I'm really down for more creepy, gnarly mummy movies. I love this Universal contingent so much. So yeah, please give this one a chance. I hope it's really good. Next up, Mercy. Every year, there's one movie that, above all others, is being very obviously dumped in January by a studio that just don't give a damn about how it turns out. And in 2026, that film is definitely Mercy, a bizarre sci-fi thriller starring Chris Pratt as a detective accused of murdering his wife. But aha, rather than be judged by a jury of his peers, Pratt's protagonist is up against an AI judge played by Rebecca Ferguson. For 90 minutes, he's given unlimited access to cloud data to prove his innocence, and if he can't, well, is bye-bye for old Detective Pratt. Yeah, this one has so many red flags. For starters, it wrapped shooting 18 months before the first trailer dropped. It's directed by the wildly uneven Timur Bekmambetov, and Pratt appears to spend the vast majority of the runtime strapped to a chair. Like, he's speedrunning the Steven Seagal career progression of, like, moving a lot in movies to just, hey, I'll do it sitting down, dude, it's all good. I've still got the moves. It just looks like a January dump movie in every fiber of its being, and a totally head-scratching IMAX 3D release. And it's near impossible to picture a reality where this thing is either critically or commercially successful. It's probably cooked. It looks pretty cooked to me. It looks roasted. It looks charred, cremated, liquefied. Oh god, why? Why do we keep doing this? Lastly, we have The Faces of Death. Faces of Death is the new project from rising filmmaker Daniel Goldhaber, who directed Cam and How to Blow Up a Pipeline, and is a remake of the infamous 1978 horror film of the same name. While the original was effectively a compilation of brutal death scenes combining footage both real and fake, this new version is presented as a more conventional narrative in which the moderator of a YouTube-like platform stumbles upon a website where people appear to be reenacting the deaths from the original movie. It's certainly an interesting and curiously self-aware way to engage with the legacy of Faces of Death, but one that apparently hasn't pleased one of its production companies, that being Legendary Entertainment. Filming initially wrapped in May 2023, with reshoots being conducted in early 2024, after which it was rated by the MPA, meaning that post-production was officially complete. But more than 18 months later, the film still isn't out, nor have we seen even a single official image, still, or anything from it. This is because the film still hasn't found a US distributor, and despite test screenings apparently going well, Legendary feels that the film Goldhaber delivered is reportedly quote-unquote too experimental. This led to them pulling Faces of Death from a planned premiere at South by Southwest earlier in 2025, and at present, there's no indication that Legendary has much interest in doing anything with it. This is really reminiscent of the recent situation with the Toxic Avenger remake, which, though eventually released roughly 2 years after it premiered, pretty much came and went without a peep. So yeah, don't be shocked if Faces of Death similarly gets a cursory limited theatrical release at best, before being quietly dumped on streaming with the least possible fuss, regardless of its ultimate quality.